I spent 45 hours playing Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Tree, a 2D action RPG that's within the Souls-like genre. I'll break down the entire game and give you my thoughts, so sit back and enjoy the review. The game's story revolves around a witch that's been captured and sentenced to death by the King Priest. As the Inquisitor, you decide to show the witch mercy and put them out of their misery quickly. This results in the Inquisitor gaining some new powers, which you're ordered to put to the test immediately by hunting even more witches. This review will be spoiler free, and I played the game on standard difficulty with the sliders set to 100. With that out of the way, let's explore the game's combat. There are 6 playable classes you can choose from. These include the Vanguard, who's melee focused and can inflict bleed, the Spellbinder, who's magic based and weakens enemies, and the good old fashioned Flameweaver, who can summon a companion as well as spam fireballs. Don't worry too much about your starting class though, as you'll be able to respec later in the game. Whilst all 6 classes differ in their skills and passive abilities, they all revolve around your health and stamina, so let's discuss the base mechanics. The green bar on your screen represents stamina, which is consumed whenever you perform an action. Mage-based classes have mana, which is depleted whenever you cast a spell, and melee builds will rely on adrenaline to perform powerful skills, which is their version of mana. If you run out of stamina, you'll still be able to attack and dodge, but at a very slow rate. This isn't as punishing as other Souls-likes, where you can't move temporarily or can't dodge at all. You'll be relying on your dodge roll to evade enemy attacks, so you'll need to manage your stamina to ensure you can attack as well as get out of danger. There are 3 abilities that can be assigned to a hotkey, and you can chop and change these as you see fit. For those that would like more options, you can assign an additional 3, but you'll have to swap between weapon sets on the fly, but this is a simple button press. I went with the Flameweaver as I had good all around stats so I could be melee focused with some fireball attacks for range. You've got one additional skill which is also class dependent. Mages will have a talisman which buffs spells and gives you an AoE attack, and Vanguards have tower shields which can absorb some incoming damage. So you've taken some damage and need to heal. Well, your trusty health flask has got your back. Now you only start off with 2 of these, which was a bit stingy, but they do the job. The same can be said for mana potions, except these don't refill at a bonfire, aka witchstones, which were formerly known as checkpoints. We'll cover witchstones shortly, but yes, your mana potions do not refill. This means you can't infinitely cheese enemies from a distance, well, at the start anyways. Would it have been efficient? Yes. Would it have been a bit cheesy? Well, yeah, a little bit. I wouldn't have done it though. The thought of spamming ranged attacks from a distance makes me sick. Now that you're familiar with the basics of combat, how does that translate into the game? You've got your regular run-of-the-mill trash mobs who will always go down in 1 or 2 hits. Their attacks can be interrupted, so you can just wail on them until they're dead. Some are extremely tanky, have poise, and considerably fast for their size. When you kill these enemies, they drop essence, which is a currency used to level up your stats. When you die, your essence will be dropped and you'll respawn at a witchstone. You'll then need to go back and pick it up, which is a Souls-like tradition. Some of you may be tempted to run past enemies if you die, as some areas are packed full of them, and let's be honest lads, we don't want to fight them again. The regular enemies aren't that much of a threat though. There are a few tanks and some others that can delete your health bar, but that's to be expected. What I didn't like was that some enemies have no wind-up animation and just straight up hit you. This was mostly the knights and halberdiers, but some of the mini-bosses and regular bosses were guilty of this too. Oh, and don't worry guys, I've got a whole section dedicated to bosses later in the video, but until then, let's explore the game world. The game world is composed of one giant map, which is split into around 20 locations. There are loading screens between areas, so you can't walk from one side to the other, but you can teleport via the use of witchstones. You've got Breyer Castle, which is full of knights and ghouls, the Forsaken Mine, which has some jumping sections that will instantly kill you, and Gloomroot Woods, which has some killer plants. All the areas differed whether you were in a city, a monastery, or a mausoleum. There was a lot of variety. Now I just stated the Forsaken Mine had some killing jumping sections, and that's because when you're not in combat, you'll have to do some platforming. It's a Metroidvania Souls-like hybrid, so this was to be expected. Now take a guess at what killed me the most in Mandragora. Go on, I'll give you a second. If you said gravity, you'd be correct. The platforming on Mandragora is a mixed bag. Sometimes you'll grab onto a series of ledges without a problem. Sometimes you'll refuse to grab the ledge, which results in you falling to your death. I died 60 times to full damage, and it was annoying every single time. Some of the distances that you fall don't even seem that high, but they'll still count as a death. Now you do have a nice auto grab, which does compensate if you're a little short of a ledge. This I did like, but sometimes your auto grab simply doesn't register, which results in you falling to your death. This This is more noticeable in areas that have axes swinging towards you, or the haunted houses which damage you if you touch the ground. This wasn't a deal breaker, but I believe the grab animations can be improved. You don't just have to focus on the game's story, there are secondary and bounty quests which can be claimed. Secondary quests are obtained by talking to NPCs you'll find throughout your journey. There are 58 quests in the game that are fully voice acted and provide some pretty good loot, so whilst they are optional, I advise doing as many as you can. For the bounty quests, you'll need to kill a certain number of enemies and you'll be rewarded with gold. I did these by playing the game naturally and didn't need to go out of my way to complete them, so just make sure to pick these up from the bounty board as soon as they become available. There are plenty of hidden parts of the map, as well as locations that can only be reached after obtaining certain abilities. Like here, I thought I would fall to my death only to reveal a hidden pathway. If you look at the map and see there are open gaps, that means there's more to the map there. Before I took on the final boss, I spent some time exploring and realised I'd missed tons of content. Hidden areas have secret bosses, new quests, as well as equipment you won't want to miss out on. These are easily missed too, so completionists out there have got their work cut out. Well, unless you watch a guide. To do battle in Mandragora, you're going to need a decent set of armour and a weapon whilst you're at it. I really liked the customisation options that were available. For your primary weapon, you'll choose from a sword, daggers, greatsword or a great hammer. Which weapon you use will be preference based. Do you want to be quick and nimble? Then go for the daggers. Do you want big DPS with a slow wind up? Well then, the great hammer will be your choice of weapon. I did think the great hammers were a bit too slow, but you can be creative with your builds to mitigate the damage you receive. All weapons scale based on your stats and have additional buffs, so you want to choose a weapon that accommodates your build. Take mine for example. As a flame weaver, I wanted to increase my chances of burning an enemy, which does damage over time. I used the scorching bludgeon, which increased my burn chance by 10% and increased my burn damage by 20%. Power was my main weapon stat, and you can see here that it had an S+ scaling. This was essentially the perfect weapon for my build. The same can be said for your armour, which provides different sets of buffs and passive abilities. Armour has 4 different tiers, starting with cloth all the way up to plate. Now cloth has poor defences and will be used for glass cannon builds who don't want to improve their vigour, which increases your equipment load. Now I pumped a lot of levels into vigour, so I used plate armour for the latter half of the game. I recommend using plate armour as the defensive buffs as well as the damage reduction will help you out in the tougher fights. There's also 4 rings that you can equip, and there's a multitude of different buffs they provide. These include stamina regeneration, aka the Chlorophy ring from Dark Souls 3, and the Sapphire Signet, which restores your mana every single time you drink a healing flask. Guys, this is one of the best rings in the game. Use a guide if you have to, but get the Sapphire Signet as soon as you can. Remember lads, there's no shame in using a guide. After all, we defeated the Orphan of Kos in Bloodborne. We'll summon... We'll use a guide if we want. We won't summon. We definitely won't summon, guys. I was joking. Shields, relics and capes can also provide stat buffs, but I'm sure you guys get the picture. Gear can be purchased from NPCs, which we'll touch on a little bit later, crafted or farmed from enemies. But yeah, I really like this system. It's highly customizable and there's a piece of gear for every idea you can think of. Now your gear goes hand in hand with your stats, as well as your abilities, so it only makes sense to look at these next. We've already mentioned that enemies drop essence when they're killed, and you can use that essence to level up. You're given talent points when you raise your level, and you can redeem these in the talent tree. Now the talent tree is massive, and it's split into 6 areas, depending on which class you've selected. Here you can invest points into your attributes. These include Constitution to raise your health, Knowledge to raise your mana, and Endurance to raise your stamina. The talent tree is also full of passive abilities that will aid you in combat. The Spellweaver, for example, has Burn, which increases your burn chance by 5%, as well as Molten Strikes, which converts 50% of your physical damage into fire. You've got plenty of other stats that will be affected by your attributes, gear and passive abilities. These include your offensive stats, resistances and status effect chances. You eventually gain the ability to spec into multiple classes at the same time, and this creates for some of the most diverse builds I've ever seen in a Souls-like. I really like this as it gives you total freedom to make some broken builds, and I've seen tons of build guides pop up in my feed. To my knowledge, 100 is the max level, and talent points are tied to your level, so I don't believe you can just keep leveling up and getting every passive in the game, as that would be pretty broken. If I'm incorrect, please let me know in the comments. Admittedly, my build was shit at the start, so I did have to respec a few times. It's free the first time, but it increases each time you use it. My last respec cost 25,000 essence, which meant I had to grind enemies for around 30 minutes, so keep that in mind as it does get costly. You can level up your skills using entropic essence, which is another form of currency. As you can see here, my my blazing weapon skill had its duration increased, does additional damage to burning enemies, and scales better with my weapon. But I did have an issue with entropic essence. It's finite, and there isn't much in the game, so whilst you can respec all of your stats, you can't reset your skills and get your entropic essence back. This means you'll have good stats but have trash level 1 abilities. This was a huge oversight, and devs, if you are watching this, I highly recommend revising the system. Let's move on to the individuals with large red health bars, the ones that make us lose our tempers. That's right, the bosses. There are several mini bosses in the game, and you really won't have much of an issue with these guys. They don't have much health, predictable move patterns, and they only have a few attacks to hit you. Some of the regular enemy hordes put up more of a fight than the mini bosses, but I didn't mind this, as not every boss needs to be tough as nails. But I did have some issues with these guys. They're all reskinned and used repeatedly throughout the game. They'll typically have a bit more health, do a bit more damage, and have a new trick or two, but they're pretty much the same. I would have liked a bit more variety when it comes to the mini bosses, especially since there's quite a few of them. This, however, isn't that big of a deal, and I'd rather have them in the game than not. Just think of them as free essence. Yeah, they may kill you a few times, but they aren't the biggest of threats. The regular bosses provided a challenge, but if we're calling Mandragora a Souls-like, it is the easier game in the genre. That's not to say I cakewalked the game, I died plenty of times, but the bosses in Mandragora offer some gimmicks. This boss, for example, breaks the stage, so you can roll off to your death and he throws a smoke bomb, making it hard to see. This boss splits into two, as well as throwing some trash mob spiders at you, and this vampire based boss is weak to light, so if you hide in the light he won't perform one of his deadly attacks. Some bosses had some cool mechanics, and it wasn't a case of just hitting them until they're dead, but that doesn't mean everything was perfect, as there were aspects that I didn't like. Now some bosses have attacks that momentarily stun you, your screen goes purple and you can't move. This can lead to you getting hit again, meaning you're about to respawn at a bonfire. The punishment for getting hit was losing HP, so I don't like the fact that I can also be stunned, leaving me wide open for another free hit. Also, some boss rooms have enemies leading up to them that you have to fight. This means that not only do you have to backtrack, but you also have to waste your time killing enemies again. Look, there's a shortcut here, but it's pointless as you can't use it if there's enemies around. Some bosses can kill you so quickly or have devastating melee attacks that you might as well just spam them with ranged attacks from a distance. There is an argument to be had that the easiest way to play this game is to spam magic or fireballs. With this guy, I'd had enough of spending minutes backtracking to the room, killing the first phase, to then get deleted in 1 or 2 hits. So I just spammed him down with fireballs. Now look guys, I know it's not pretty to look at, but this was the most effective way to take him down. Towards the end of the game, the bosses can also kill you in 1 or 2 hits. I wasn't sure if it was my build, but I did know I was getting killed quickly. The fights weren't that difficult, but their damage was crazy. You can play perfectly for the entire fight, only to get tagged once, leading to another hit, and that's all she wrote. The bosses for the most part are manageable, but they will provide you with a challenge. I did struggle with a few of them, especially the final boss, but as I said earlier, this is one of the easier Souls-likes. With bosses out of the way, what about the people that you'll encounter on your journey? Let's look at the NPCs who will be helping you along the way. The Witch Tree is the hub area in the game where all the NPCs you meet will relocate to. There's 7 in total, and they all have some form of utility, although some were worse than others, like the cook. Ulfar's the blacksmith and he'll craft and sell you gear. Reese is an occultist who can enchant your weapons and armour, and Ursa is the goldsmith who can craft rings. All vendors require resources to craft items. They sell some of these, but the rest you'll need to find in the game world. Vendors can also be leveled up by giving them diagrams, which allows them to craft higher level gear, and you can use resources to upgrade their carts. This reduces their shop prices and increases your odds at finding further resources in the world. One of the most important vendors is Gerald the Adventurer, as giving him map fragments reveals the map and shows all of the resources there. These include doors, mini-bosses and hidden pathways. Map fragments are usually a bit harder to find, but you'll find most of them if you like to explore. If you come across an empty flask, make sure to go and speak to Ursa, as this will increase your healing flasks. I noticed this several hours into the game and was only playing with 2 healing charges, making the game significantly harder for no reason. The bounty board is also next to Gerald, so pick up any new ones whenever you visit the hub. I've touched on the game's difficulty, but let me elaborate in more detail. You can adjust the game's difficulty sliders, which affects enemies' health, their damage and how much stamina you consume. These can be adjusted from 100%, which is the game's default, all the way down to 70%. Whilst I did play the game on 100% difficulty, as well as the bosses, I did adjust the sliders at some points. If I wanted to learn a boss's moveset, I dropped the difficulty down to 70% to get some practice in, and when I was ready, moved them back to 100. This is because some bosses bosses can kill you so fast and you don't have much time to learn their attacks. This was handier for two-phase bosses, and don't worry, there's no difficulty based achievements, so you're fine to adjust these. I also dropped the sliders down to 70% when I was farming enemies for gear or when I was farming for resources. I'd already cleared these areas at 100%, so do yourselves a favour and make the farming process easier. There's no summons in the game, so if you really are struggling, just play around with the sliders. It's a game that's meant to entertain you, and if it's not entertaining you at 100% difficulty, then lower it and have some fun. Whilst I did enjoy my time with Mandragora, it does have some issues, and some of them are quite frustrating, so let's take a look into these. Mandragora did suffer from some frame rate issues which caused the game to stutter. These weren't game breaking and weren't a constant issue, but they were noticeable. This was a common occurrence when defeating a boss or using a witch stone, and happened most of the time. In some areas there is a severe lack of witch stones, which means if you die, you've got quite a distance to get back to where you were. This was frustrating when they put boss encounters far from a checkpoint, as well as putting mandatory regular enemies on the path. This meant you could take damage on the way to the boss, whilst also having to clear out enemies. Enemies can attack you whilst not even being present on the screen. It's hard to react to an attack when you have no idea it's coming. Some enemies managed to get glitched into walls, and my imp summon started to glitch and wouldn't attack any enemies. The button to run is also the interact button, so if you try and run and you're in the vicinity of a door, you'll just go through the door instead. Fortunately, you can customize your controls to mitigate this problem, but I doubt many people will. I mean, come on. If you have the Phoenix ability unlocked as a Flame Weaver, you can get stuck in a boss room if you die. The only way to leave is to exit the game. I had to respec my character to get rid of Phoenix just for this one fight. Whilst none of these individually are a cause for concern, they do show an overall lack of polish. Many of these can be fixed, so I'm hoping they can be remedied in an upcoming patch. The game is still enjoyable, and these won't hamper your experience too much, but this wouldn't be a true review if I didn't mention everything. The game world and presentation look good. Now, the graphics aren't revolutionary, but there's only so much you can do with a 2.5D game. The voice actors, on the other hand, were excellent, apart from one NPC who sounded like they hired a rando off the streets. The music composers also did a great job, as well as the sound effects team. I'm a stickler for sound within video games and can appreciate when it's been done well. With that said, it's about time to wrap this review up. Mandragora took me 45 hours to complete the game, but I was exploring and doing a lot of testing, so your time may vary. The 25-hour mark seems to be the sweet spot, and how long it took most players to complete the game. I paid £35 or $40 and I'm happy with the price point, although it is on the expensive side for this style of game. Considering Ender Magnolia released at £20, Blasphemous 2 at £25 and Dead Cells also at £20. I did enjoy the combat, the talent tree as well as the build variety. You can really tailor your character to any playstyle you want, and all the classes were viable. The game is held back by some bugs and optimization issues, but I'm sure these will be rectified in a patch. This type of game is screaming out for New Game Plus, and whilst it's not available, the devs have said it's in the works. So when you've completed the game, there's nothing to do apart from gather collectibles and kill some mini bosses if you haven't already. The game wasn't too difficult, but had some frustrating bosses that I believe could benefit from some fine tuning. As of writing, only 5.6% of players have beaten the game, and I can guarantee they're stuck on the final boss like I was. With my thoughts out of the way, what did the critics have to say about Mandragora? It sits at strong on OpenCritic with a score of 78, a 73 on Metacritic, and mixed on Steam. I think all of these scores are accurate and I do agree with them. I'm giving Mandragora Whispers of the Witch Tree a 7.5. If they can address some of the issues as well as implement New Game Plus, then you're looking at a serious contender within the Metroidvania / Souls-like category. Thank you to all those that stuck around to the end. Your time is much appreciated. If you enjoyed the video, you know what to do, as you've heard it all a million times. So, until next time lads, I'll catch you all on the next video.